Here is a walking tour of my greenhouse. Basically, it's just a hole in the ground. Dug it out with the track loader. Used some old mobile home rafters and some 6 mil plastic. And it's right at 6 foot deep. Maintains about 40 degrees with no internal heat. Coming in the door here, here's some cracky bucket tomatoes that are fed with a float valve and a 5-gallon bucket to keep a constant level in the pots. Here's a table with just some assorted extra plants and stuff that I hated to throw away, so I rooted them. I'll give them to someone. These two in the white buckets here, they're just some suckers off of the hydroponic tomatoes that thought I would root. They root good in perlite in the hydroponic solution. Here's the main hydroponic tomatoes I've got. The first row of buckets were the first ones I put in here around December. They're pushing 3 months old. They grow kind of slow with the 40-degree nighttime temperature, but they're coming on. They're starting to bloom. Should have tomatoes in a few days. The back row was put in about a month later. The front row is standard Dutch bucket type tomatoes with a circulating pump and a reservoir in the ground. The back row is a system that I've kind of experimented with. It's similar to a Kratky system, but the buckets are filled with perlite, and it has a supply bucket with a float valve in it that maintains a 1-inch level of nutrient solution in the bottom. I did some tests, and with an inch of solution in the bottom of a bucket, it would capillary action would wick it up through the perlite in about 15 minutes, and they'd be saturated all the way through. They're a little smaller than the front row, but they were planted quite a bit later and seem to be doing quite well. It's a simple system. It doesn't require aeration, doesn't require a pump, and so far seems to be working real well. We'll know a little bit more about it later. Walking on to the back, I've got some Brussels sprouts. They're in Kratky buckets with no hose connections or nothing, just the solution that's in the buckets. I top it off every once in a while, maintain about 4 inches deep in the gallon buckets. Back here are some cucumbers. These are Arkansas little leaf cucumbers. They're parthenocarpic. They will produce cucumbers without being pollinated, so they say, and should work good in my greenhouse, I hope. I noticed today that this one right here, as little as it is actually starting to bloom a little bit, so maybe I'll have a few cucumbers before long. Coming on back to the back, this is some iceberg lettuce I just stuck in there and some onions to see what the iceberg would do. Excuse me, I've never grown iceberg before. It seems to be maybe getting to the point that it's trying to form a head. I'm not sure. In the center of the floor, excuse me again, are some banana plants. This is what I actually made this greenhouse for, but they've survived the cool winters, but they just don't do well till warm weather in spring. Up here in these buckets are some that I had in the ground and took out and put in buckets. They're a variety called Viente Cole. They're a real short cycle banana that just has bananas an incredibly short length of time, but they're really not even cool tolerant, let alone cold tolerant, and they do poorly in cool weather. I had one I put in the ground last May, about 14 inches tall, and it bloomed and was having bananas on it by the last of October, which frost got them before I could enjoy them. But it shows possibility if it just wasn't so tender and fragile. Coming out the door, I'm going to walk on outside. It's still kind of a mess around here from all the grading and dirt moving and piling up. I'm just one old man, and kind of hard for me to get everything done, but I think we can climb up this bank and I'll get an outside picture of the old greenhouse here. This is what it looks like from the outside. You can see it's just plain 6 mil plastic. This isn't greenhouse material, so probably about 1 year is all it'll be good for. It's starting to get pretty warm, so I'm gonna have to work on some type of ventilation system. But it's really did quite well over the winter, so I may go ahead and put regular greenhouse plastic on it, which would be good for about 3 years. Anyway, that's the poor man's dirt ditch greenhouse. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Thank you.